And we're live. Hey guys, it's your girl Jay Sharan. And this week I have my husband. We were putting the baby to bed, so we made it a little bit later, and the baby kind of knew I felt because she was not going to sleep. My husband is a stickler for time. I, however, am not on the Lauryn Hill spectrum, but I can definitely work on being more prompt like him and my son. So, Mr. Michael Windom, we are so excited to have you here to wrap up Black men and mental health, talking about dating, relationships, and just honoring the fact that Black men have a voice that should be heard, and what it's like to really work through this world as a man, trying to make sure your mental health is intact and maintain the balance of life and relationships. So how are you today?
I'm all right. I'm all right. I can tell you right now from the first couple seconds of this interview, it's either gonna go really good or really bad. So if it goes really bad, I'm saying, we can talk about it after the show. So I try not to say anything that gets me in trouble after the show. Like, I try to keep it real, but I don't want to get myself in trouble after the show though. So I'm good though.
You know
So
what's funny is that those were your opening words when we were dating. Look, we're either gonna be really really close, or we're gonna keep going in this relationship. We're gonna be like brother and sister and not date at all, or we just gonna carry this thing on through. It's either gonna go one or two ways.
pretty fair. Pretty fair. Pretty fair. I'll go
So
with that.
why do you feel like it could go awry though? Why do you feel like in this interview it could go one or two ways?
Well, because, like, I mean, I know we're gonna keep it real with each other, but
Yeah.
like, also, people watching, so it's like, keep it real with them too. Like, one thing that people that are close to me know is that you're gonna pretty much get it authentic with me anyway. Like, I don't really know how to do it any other way but the way that I do it, and I think you would agree. I
Yeah.
hope you would agree. You know what I mean? But it is what it is.
Yeah, you pretty much, yeah. You know what's interesting is everybody that I ran into the last 2 years, even I'm when I tell you this across the board, I mean across the board. We ran into a guy that I went to high school with, but we both went to college with. And he was like, Mike Windom, solid dude, right? When I go to the corporate parties that his job throws, these VPs are like, let me tell you about your husband. Solid dude. Like it's the consistency about who you are that has people speak the same kind of language where it concerns you. So tell me a little bit about you being who you are in a world that's trying to make you different.
Man, that's something I wrestle with every day. Honestly, like, I think sometimes, like, when you look around, like, you look at social media, you look at different things, right? It's easy to, like, feed into what the world tells you should be, right? Like, because it depends on whatever app you're looking at, right? There's an app to pretty much tell you how to think in every situation, right? Like, if you want to feel like you need to be better in your career, you can go to LinkedIn. Like,
Yeah.
you want to feel like you may or may not be doing better than some people in your hometown, you might go to Facebook. That's still your thing, right? Like,
Right.
if you want to see what the newest fashion is or what this rapper's wearing, that rapper's wearing, you go to Instagram, right? So I think, I just think as we grown in this, like, this technical world, right? A lot of I would say a lot of the things around us have changed. Like, life is pretty much fundamentally the same, but the things around us, I think, are different, right? Just with the speed of information, stuff like that, right? So going back to your question about myself, is that I really look at what everybody looks talks about as their standard or what they feel like great is, but also I fit myself into, like, whatever I'm trying to do. I think I'm big on doing what you got to do and focusing on your path, forging your path, that kind of stuff. Like, me, I'm pretty disciplined, pretty regimented every day. I try to wake up pretty intentional.
Right.
Um, so when you wake up intentional, a lot of times you can kind of block out a lot of the noise that, you see that basically tries to, skew you one way or another in life. So, yeah.
So it sounds like you said a couple of things. One, that the way we do business has changed, right? I think about
It's true.
even my dad saying things like he wrote letters, right? We don't really do that anymore. I mean, if somebody wants to do something or say something, they can shoot you something on social media, they can DM you, they can look at your profile. I mean, it's even one of the things I suggest sometimes when you're getting to know someone and you're not ready to give them your phone number, is what, exchange social media contact. And it's
Right.
interesting that I say that as opposed to your number, because really, when you exchange social media contact, that's everything. Your family, if you're dating somebody, it's probably going to come out. right? If you're not dating somebody, your career, like you said on LinkedIn, I mean, there's pretty much a platform or site for whoever you want to be, whoever you
Right.
want to create yourself into, and wherever you kind of want to take your next steps, there's a platform for it. I think about even Google at one point had like Google Plus. I think they still do, where you can create this profile on Google. And so it's pretty much a platform or something that you could be doing for pretty much everything. And so it
Absolutely.
sounds like one of the things you said was be intentional. So what
True.
are some things you do? You know, I've watched you do them over the course of the year, like the boxing and the books, just to be intentional about guarding who you are.
I mean, I wouldn't just say about guarding who you are, right? Like I say, like for me, being intentional is understanding that like pain sometimes leads you to purpose. Like you can't avoid pain, right? Like I think people would do whatever they can. They'll numb it, they'll try to go around it, but like pain sometimes is a necessary part of life. I wouldn't say it's a necessary part of life. It's a consistent part of life, right? And I think pain looks different for different people.
Right.
So for me, my like for example, I know like you see it, but it's like in my job, like just working in like a global job, right? Like I know every day I wake up, like I'm probably gonna have like 10 emails from another country that has like 5 or 6 hours on me just from a sleeping standpoint. So I know
Right.
that,
They're already up. They're
yeah,
already at lunch. By the time you hit the floor, they're eating lunch. Yeah.
right. Like it would be almost like ignorant to think that like I wake up and it's not chaotic, right? So it's like I think a lot of times when you expect chaos, you're not so shocked by it, right? Like people are like, oh my God, why did this happen? Why did that happen? I think a lot of times when you look at just chaotic situations,
Yeah.
I think getting a step on it is really sometimes the difference between success and failure, right? Like sometimes it might literally be getting that time in the morning to meditate, getting that time to
Yeah.
walk, getting that time to think, right? Getting the time just to get your thoughts together before you communicate with somebody, right? Because one thing you know about me is I operate in a triangle. And I always talk about the chimp paradox, where it's like, you got your logical thinking, your rational thinking, and your emotional thinking. So it's like if you don't do things to really protect your mind, protect yourself, things like that, then I mean more than likely your emotions gonna take over. And none of us are any good if we are consistently leading with emotion. At least that's the way I
Right.
feel.
And I think you said something important about timing. I think sometimes that we have these conversations, or like you said, you have to know when to do things. And I think that is important. I think I have had to learn that. You come to me at 9 a.m., don't. I'm better at night. You know what I mean? Or towards the day where I've kind of had a chance for my brain to wake up. You for sure are like 5 a.m., you're on go. And I'm like, I haven't even opened my eyes yet. And then you said, I'm trying to think. You said something, you talk about the chimp paradox, but tell us a little bit more about logical, rational, and emotional, like leading with one of these three.
I mean, like I said, for me, it's simple. Like, I mean, logic. I think logic and the ability to, like, I know, like I say, rationalize, but really just simplify things. I think allows you to really put things in perspective. Because I always tell you this. It's like I feel like I would have been much further along if I would have looked for something simple as opposed to that complex idea, right? And I think not that like complex ideas aren't great. People should always pursue their passion. Like if it's a complex idea that you got and it solves a lot of problems, then you go forward with your complex idea. But I think for me, I always found that like the best things that I put my time, energy, and effort into were the simple things, right? Like it's like sometimes it's just simplifying things, focusing on what's simple, and you can build up to things more complex, right? Because I think a lot of times we have such big dreams sometimes that we'll just want to do the biggest, most bangingest thing when sometimes like what might liberate you or free you might be right there next to your face, or it might be tapping you on the shoulder. If you just kind of are aware enough to say like, okay, where is that coming from?
Got you. So almost making the complex things more simple, taking it
Yeah,
in steps and making sure that they're kind of simple.
right, straight up.
So when you think about setting healthy habits in a digital world and kind of where we're going with this, what's interesting to me is I noticed that even when you talk about being these things in different communities, a lot of Black men talk about they have to wear glasses. Now, me and you both wear them because we need them, but there are people that I know that work in corporate settings and that wear glasses because they don't want to seem threatening. I mean, so as a Black man, do you feel like you can how do you kind of work through owning who you are in every space, and then what does that look like for you even when it comes to personally or professionally?
I mean, like, okay, so one thing I'll touch on is like, the narrative that like Black men have to wear glasses to like make it in a corporate environment. Like, I'll just put an end to that narrative like right now. I just feel like every Black man like going forward should come and bring who they are. Right. I don't feel like you should go into a situation where you feel threatened to the point that you can at least infuse who you are. Right. Because you always go like I'm big on like go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. Right. Like if because you're you and you're bringing yourself. That's not an environment you really want to be in. That company probably has bigger problems. It's probably signs of an even bigger toxic organization. And that might be the difference between saving that dude life and not saving that dude life, really getting out of that situation. So first and foremost, I'll say this. Like now, the thing about me, funnily, just real funny on like me in corporate is that, my boss at the time, like I got one of these jobs where I had to like, write a lot on the board. And, I could tell that like my vision was a little bit bad. And she just like made me because it just ticked her off because she was just like, you don't get some glasses. Like, I might have to find somebody else because you keep squinting at the board. Now, like I had to wear glasses, right? But I'll say this though. I used to joke, I used to say this a lot. Like sometimes I wear glasses for their protection because they might see these glasses and feel like, and you know what? Sometimes that is a misconception. People feel like because you wear glasses that you'll push over and you easy, and that's cool too. But it's like that's up to them to assume, right? So I would just say like, I don't know, anybody listening to it right there, like don't let anybody change you, period. Especially now because I like whether you see it or not. Like I would say a lot of the generation of Black men, like I say in my situation at work, corporate jobs, stuff like that. Like I'm gonna lead a framework for like somebody behind to be like, man, be yourself. Don't switch up. Because I'll be honest with you, when I looked for help, I really didn't see a lot of it, especially from people that look like me or that were even close to being like me. So I was like, one thing I realized for me to get where I had to go, I had to be myself. Like I couldn't switch up who I was. Didn't matter how educated I was, how well I spoke, none of that. Like ultimately who you are is gonna like it's gonna show itself. So you might as well, just go ahead and tap in and understand that.
So how do you teach this to our son? Because I know that moms and dads often have like different views about, you know what I mean, what it means to, there's a lot of debate. One of my friends posted today, like if the guy was raised, if he is a single man raised by a single mother, he cannot tell anybody how to be a wife. Well, and so I know the one thing that's constant that dads say, moms can't teach boys how to be men. You know what I mean? So when you're talking being authentic, handling your business, just being you who you are, no matter where you are kind of faced with, because what's interesting is at this point in life, me and you have literally done life together. Like in January when I buried my dad, like you were there, and that's one of many moments that solidified we have done, like we've been through the highs, we've been through that's something I even talked to your parents about. Like we are now at the stage where we're burying relatives together. I mean, the year that we lost our grandmothers, we lost them both the same year. We buried yours, then 5 months down the line, we buried mine. And so when you think about having to handle life and that so much comes at you as a man holding down your family, what is it that you want your son to take away? Like, how do you put into him kind of the things you want for him to stick the most?
Well, I mean, it's two things that you got to be like that I know for him. It's like you got to be confident and you got to be quick. And what I mean by that is it's like confidence is like when you find your confidence, you find your voice. Like straight up. Like every time you're confident, like a lot of times I know it's big on like finding your voice or finding it, but it's like once you find it, you're pretty much unlocking whatever you want anyway, right? Like because there's a reason you want to have this voice and stuff, right? So I think confidence is something that we have to put in our kid, right? Because like you asked me, like what is the world throwing all this stuff? Like what is throwing these kids, right? It's like what is he looking at before he goes to the third grade and does all the stuff that he's got to do, which we see is different than what we grew up on. But it's like, for him it's confidence, right? And I'll get to the quickness part in a second, but it's like being confident will paved the path for him to try different things. Because when you're
Right.
confident, you're not scared to fail. That's one thing I always tell you. It's like, like don't build this glass house to be fragile when you can fail and learn from it and
Right.
still be even stronger. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because you're preventing something that's going to grow you anyway, right? And, I'm big on that kind of stuff, right? But I think the second part of it, when we talk about being quick, is and what I mean by being quick is being adaptable, like being adaptable to a world that's gonna look even different when he's an adult, and understand that. Like my
Yeah.
thing is, we'd be stupid right now to sit here and say that like the world is gonna look the exact same as it does now when he becomes an adult, right? So it's like it's
Right.
already preparing him for change so that you're not so shocked because I put it to you like this: shock causes paralysis in a lot of situations because when you
Mm.
when you go into a state of shock, you really can't do anything. And it's like, oh my god, the real world, and I'm shocked. Like
Right.
okay, like it'll
Flight,
pass you
fright, or
right on by.
freeze. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like what you said about preparing him for the real world and giving him confidence, and then making sure that because when you're confident, you can kind of do anything. That you're
Right.
preparing him to be able to take on these and fail. That's the one thing. Like if you guys know me and him, Michael is not afraid to take a risk. I'm like, oh dear, it's got to be perfect. It's got to be, which is part of the reason why I pushed this podcast, even though I didn't have everything the way I wanted it at first, because I know me. I'll philander around and it's got to be. And Michael's like, no, when are you gonna do it? When are you gonna do it? When are you gonna do it? I'm like, I'll do it. He's like, he'll fail and get up. He's like, Jocelyn, you gotta fail fast. I'm like, no, you don't. This is why I made A's in school.
See
And
what
he's
I'm
like,
saying?
yeah, them
Right.
A's don't.
Exactly. And see why you got to speak in that voice. See, like that's why I said like, see, we're
And y'all
doing
always
good
talk
on
about this
every.
voice. Like, there it go.
It's
There go the
like you
voice.
go in that voice. It's like,
let me tell y'all, he literally pulls out a mini violin for me. Do y'all hear me? He would literally go like this and start like, okay, where's the cheese?
It's what the interview's
Go to the
starting to go off the
horn.
rails. Yep, there we go. No, we good. Okay, you're right. I mean, it's true. Anyway,
But it challenges because you need both, right? You need somebody that's going to say, no, we got to be detailed, do things in excellence. And then sometimes you need somebody to say, we ain't got time for that. Put it out there and we'll figure out the details when we get to moving. Because sometimes you need both. You need to move quickly and figure it out. And sometimes you need to slow down and get the details. I think
all
it's
right,
a balance of the two, but you can't, because what happens is when you are a kid that's always academically high achieving, you don't know what it's like to fail. And then when
right.
you fail, you freak out, right? When I
All
got
right.
my first B in fifth grade, I almost passed out on the concrete. Michael tells the stories of when he was in school, and it's like, dude, things happen. I got over them, right? I was just fine in life. And I feel like that is a statement that prepares you more for life because we're not taught to fail. What we're taught
True.
is as Black people, we can't fail, right? As a mom, as a dad, as a person, we cannot fail. We have no room in school.
I
We
mean
have
that's
no
true,
room
but
in
I mean, but
college,
that's true to an extent. Though. I mean, but but I mean that's true to an extent though. Like, because I feel like all of us, like, I mean, majority of the people that have made it to this age or have made it to some point of something have had to be calculated in the way they
Right.
move. Especially like, I mean, if you come from like humble upbringings or like, you know what I mean? Like
You
everybody
getting it
got a
out the
story.
mud. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody got a story though. Like.
But like you said, it's a balance of both, right? At some
Yeah.
point, you're going to fail at something. You can't be so controlling and so calculated that when you fail, it takes you out. And I think that's the one thing I like that you teach. Like, you can't be so holding on to it that when you have one mistake or failure, that's it, right?
Yeah.
It's uprooted your entire life.
Right. I
You're
mean,
moping.
but my thing is that's why I don't preach perfection to people though. That's
Yeah.
why I don't like honestly, I'm big on that. Matter of fact, I always talk about it. It's
Go
like,
ahead and get into
people
it. You're not the standard.
no,
Go
no,
ahead.
no.
Let's talk
But
about it.
we
I
talk. I
think
mean,
that's true, though.
but
Go
it's the
ahead.
truth though. Like, because we always talk about it. Because it's like people are like,
Right.
well, I like the way you guys have been married for 9 years. But it's like, for me, like when it comes to all of that kind of stuff, like for me, I always like to like. That's why being yourself is so important. Like because
Right.
I know that like for me, there's always levels to myself. There's always things you can work on. There's always things you can do better, right? So it's almost
Right.
like that's why you got to know what you want out of it, right? Because you start fulfilling everybody else's expectation, and then you're gonna be empty on the inside. And it's like, this life stuff come quick. It comes and
Right.
goes absolutely far too quick not to realize that kind of stuff or not to have that kind of awareness. But that's just me.
So it's interesting because I live in the therapy, dating, relationship world. Everybody else says, "What do your husband think? Oh my God, you have a good marriage." Like Michael says, And he is quick to be like, dude, I'm not perfect. You not hold me up as no standard. You not
Mm-mm.
hold our marriage up as no standard.
Nope.
And so I feel like you have to, because you can't, because the day you hold us up as a standard is the day you'll catch us arguing, right? Or
Yep.
the day that we're not
Yeah.
having a good day. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And then things are
Right.
going awry because, to be honest, this is the one thing, Aunt Nisi, I call her Aunt Nisi. She was a teacher that I worked with at our house before I got married, before I started dating my husband. It led into me dating him. She'd been married 25 years at a time, I think. And she said, marriage is work, but with the right person, the work is worth it. But please don't get it twisted. It is work. You know what I mean? And I think people go into it sometimes not understanding the amount. I remember back in year 5 or 6, my narrative for us was we worked really hard on this because we were like in the mud trying to get it out. When you're married, you have so many different transitions, job changes, address changes, kid changes, parent changes, you know what I mean? And so you're literally in the trenches together, trying to work, to build, to dig, to throw away, to get rid, you know what I mean? To uplift. And you're doing it simultaneously, right? You're getting it out the mud as you build a house, right? You're trying to build a foundation as you're tearing down walls. Because what people forget is you're two people with different or similar upbringings, usually different enough for you to be like, I didn't do that growing up. Like for me, birthdays are big. Michael's big on birthdays, but not like me, because I'm like, oh my God. In that
There you
voice,
go.
that,
There you
the
go.
birthday. He's like, dude, tomorrow's still a day when we can celebrate a birthday. And I'm like, but on the day. And he's like, it'll be fine.
Right.
It'll be fine. It's not that intense. And so I think people forget that you're two separate people that live, and the older you get, the more intense it is, because now you've kind of settled into your own way of doing things, right? And not emerging two different ways becomes more work than it would have previously been when you're younger and you're more flexible and you're kind of, we got married late 20s, like 26, 27. You know what I mean? So we were in grad school, we were both working. So we kind of built our life together. But what happens when you each have a life you're trying to combine that you've already built?
I mean, are you asking, or are you
So I'm just
telling?
thinking in general. I mean, what do you
Okay,
think
because
about that? I mean, I think we built our life together, but do you feel like when people are trying to really work through relationships, like what happens when they're trying to merge? I mean, this is, two lives that we've
I
built.
mean, look, I got you. I mean, my thing is, you look at somebody and you ask yourself, like, can I have a tough conversation with this person?
Mm-hmm.
And after I have a tough conversation with this person, how will things be? How do we work through
Yeah.
things, right? Because it's always how you work through tough conversations, right? Because it's gonna happen. Like, I think you always, like, everything is cool until you argue, right? And actually,
Right.
sometimes I'm gonna tell you like this: like, if you go on dating a long time and you don't argue, that might be a red flag too. Because
Yeah.
like, when you finally do argue, it's like, oh, okay, I see why we don't argue. Because you might be hiding some stuff on the inside that a little
Yeah.
bit crazy. You know what I mean? But
Right.
but you got to know though. Like, I mean, because my thing is, you got to know that kind of stuff, man.
You
So I
do.
mean, like I said, I really try to, and I'm really big. Like, we kind of the opposite of this stuff. Like, I'm like against advice because I feel like you always willing to work for what you want. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you'll put in the work for what you want. You see what I'm saying? But chemistry is important. Chemistry is one of them fickle things. Like, it's been probably situations where you can put your all into a person, but it's just
Yeah.
the chemistry just ain't there, right? Like, it's almost
Mm.
like a scientific thing, and it's just like oil and
Gotta
water,
fit.
right? It's gonna repel, like, just whatever.
Now you were saying something about you were saying it's chemistry, but you got to put in the work. He is against it. So when y'all ask me what he thinks, he's not. This is this. So y'all hear from him. He isn't. I'm like, I can get feedback. He's like, no, I don't. I don't. So why do you feel like you're against advice? Why do you feel like giving people relationship advice is just not the way to go about it?
I mean, because I feel like anybody that you're talking to, right? It's just like, honestly, like, we talk about being rich, right? Let's say I want to be rich, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
still it's still what you put into it. You still
Yeah.
got to put work into it, right? Like, everything that you want, you got to put work into. Like, that's the one thing I've probably realized the most as I've gotten older is, like, if I want to do something entrepreneurial, I need to put work into it. If
Yeah.
I literally want to think outside of the 9 to 5, then I need to put work into it. Like, but if I want to also master the 9 to 5 while I'm doing that, I need to put work in that too. So I just feel like people will put work for the things that they want, right? Like, I put it to you like this: if ask a shoehead if they ever miss a Nike release day when it comes for the J's. Like, and they be crushed when they can't get the shoes, right? But the
Yeah.
intentionality is there. It's like, hey, it's a shoe day. I'm a shoe head. I'm gonna try to get this shoe. And more than likely, they may not get every shoe, but they're gonna get more shoes than not because they're putting themselves in position, right? Like, I mean, they always get a cliche analogies where it's like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take or whatever, the analogy go. But it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, my thing is, and that go for women too, though, man. Because I'll be honest with you, like I know sometimes, I listen, and I know sometimes it's like, well, women are getting shortchanged sometimes by men, but it's a lot of women out here that are not putting themselves in position to find a lot of men too. Because if you ask the man the number one thing that he want, what are you gonna tell you? Like what we
peace.
Peace, exactly, peace. Right. And remember, we argued. We had a discussion about it a couple of weeks ago. It's like, man, I was talking about they want peace. But it's like, I mean, like I said.
Like literally, I mean, it is the number one answer I have gotten. I'm talking about with teenagers. I'm talking about with grown men, college students. When you ask men, the number one thing they want, peace.
So check it out though, and I'm gonna say it another way, right? I'm gonna say we can almost I know we ain't ready to end the podcast yet, but we can almost end it the way we started it. It's like when we talk about peace, right? What's the first thing I said earlier when I was talking about my days and why I'm intentional and all that kind of stuff? Because I'm dealing with chaos, starting like hands down, like whether I do it for myself or whether I do it for a job, like I'm dealing with chaos, right? So if and sometimes when you got kids, it's impossible to have that peace that you always think you need, but ultimately it's balance though. Like when a man say peace, he mean balance. Like if you can't balance a man out, then more than likely the saga gonna continue. You know what I'm
saying? So it's kind of there's this big debate about what women bring to the table, right? Men are saying that if we're paying for stuff, we're taking you on dates. What are you bringing to me? So what do you feel about that debate? Do you feel like that kind of ends it? Like men want peace. What you need to bring to me is a way to balance my life. Or do you feel like that's even a valid argument to have? What do women bring to the table?
I think sometimes, like I said, I think the women that are like, I always say that like, certain type of people will never go out of style. And those are the people that are sometimes like selfless people. Now, don't get me wrong. A selfless person can get their heart broken, they can get taken advantage of, they can get manipulated, so on and so forth. But I still think people that sometimes understand that, it is about them and what they need to do and everything they got going on, but also sometimes selflessness, like sometimes putting other people in position to succeed. Sometimes even when you don't know you need it, like they might read you and say like, oh, okay, well, long day, you might need, some, what I'm saying, or do this, da. Like my thing is like, again, life is short, right? Like you got to do it with people who make it simple, right? Like that's the whole point, simplicity, right? Because here's the thing: if I wanted to deal with something more complex, like I honestly, here's the thing. I'll say it another way, because like dealing with stuff complex is what I do every day. Right. It's like I need some harmony. I need some peace and harmony to the, to the complexity.
So you're saying if you're already dealing with things that are hard and chaotic, and I like this. I do have a question about the chaos, and I'm glad you brought that back up because I kind of forgot. But chaos, do you think sometimes that we have learned in general to thrive in so much chaos that we don't know what peace looks like?
Nah, I think I think like to not know that you're in chaos and not to look for peace is insane anyway. First of all, like my thing is like, think about it. Your life hard, it's gonna be hard tomorrow, and then you like, oh, like I don't know, it's just gonna be hard, and like you don't look for nothing. Like you ain't got no silver lining. Like you're gonna crash out, you're gonna burn out. Like that's how burnout happens. Like you just, and what they always say, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different result. Like that's literally the definition of it. Like if you don't have an outlet, every rich person, every person that is successful, not even just a rich person, a person that has figured life out has a vice. They have something to help them decompress. They have something to go to that allows them to deal with their current reality.
Gotcha. So they have something that kind of gives them an outlet, whether it be skiing or smoking cigars. Steve Harvey was talking about this the other day, that his is kind of smoking cigars. Cam Newton said the same thing. So it could be baking, it could be cooking, it could be books, it could be
Whatever it is,
writing,
you got to have
whatever
something.
it is that leads you to having that outlet. That's why I like the book by Mike Cheek Sent Me High about flow. And it talks about the creation and way to find happiness is that you get into this state where you really like whatever you're doing. You don't even, you're hungry, but you don't eat. You got to pee, but you just hold it. That you get into this space that you are just in tune with what brings you balance. And it sounds like when you're talking about relationships, that's what makes things work is balance. The how you balance life, because life gets hard and life is not always, you think about the vows you take when you're married. It's like those vows are words until you live them. So you have to have those tough conversations. I remember having a conversation. To this day, I still don't know how I was going to just do something. And you were like, dude, what are you doing? Like you were just going to leave and try not to, I had somewhere to go. I didn't really want to tell him where I was going because I knew he was going to hit the ceiling. And, he was like, how are you going to play this out? You know what I mean? And so it comes to the realization. One of the things I realized was I wasn't as good as everybody said I was, right? Because as a kid, you're a good kid. You're a good person. You're a good college. You're good, right? I wasn't. Marriage made me realize I got some stuff to work on. And it's not always my partner who's at fault. I have some things that I bring to the table that are flawed. And I think that sometimes getting lost in this narrative, when I work with people even dating, they get lost in this narrative of, and we talk about this even with our daughter. She's little now, but eventually she'll grow up to look at daddy and be like, oh my God, I want a man like daddy. Right. And then they get lost in this narrative looking for a man like daddy as their daddy, not necessarily as a husband to their mother. And so can you tell me a little bit about, I know that your parents have a good marriage. What did you see out of marriage when you grew up?
I mean, I saw people, honestly, just while we talking about this, because I don't really ever talk about this type of stuff. But I mean, I saw consistency. That was the main thing that I saw, right? I saw people that were imperfect. I saw sometimes, arguments, and sometimes being a kid, like, I wonder who was right there. Was dad right? Was mom right? I don't know. Like, seemed like he might have had a point there, but she might have had a point. But
like everybody,
but
almost
I also
subjective opinion, kind of
exactly. But I also saw people that like did everything they could to make sure their kids were in a situation to be, like whatever they wanted to be, right? Like I wouldn't say good or great, right? That's just a matter of opinion. But I think, they set us up well to be who we are, right? And even me and my brother, like we're two totally different individuals, but ultimately we still kind of cut from the same cloth in the way we move and just the way we operate and what we look for out of life. And we, like I said, they probably put that seed in us to be intentional. That's why I think just with the kids we raising, we put them in position too. Like, and whatever they do is on them. But again, you can't say that, they have parents who didn't try to put them in position.
I think that's key. What you said, the first thing you said was consistency. It was the first thing I noticed about you where you were consistent always. Like when we were dating, when he said he was going to do stuff, he was super consistent. And for me, that was very important for me. That's the one thing I noticed. And I can say your parents are amazing. Like they've been married for years. And so I feel like that seeing something consistently done helps you understand that it can be done. Right, that there'll be days that will be all over the place. There'll be days that are run smooth, and all over the place doesn't necessarily have to be bad. It could just be. I think about that you and your brother both play sports, right? Y'all didn't just play football. You play soccer. You play varsity baseball. You play baseball in college for a little bit. Justin plays football. He plays football in college. Your dad referees. Your mom is, so it can be that it's a very full day. How do we make this work? We got games and jobs and things all happening at the same time. Folks got to eat. Folks still got to get homework done. You know what I mean? How does all of this work? Because life happens. And I think that consistency and understanding life happens and really working through to honor what balance looks like for you as a couple. Because what works for me and Michael, that's why part of the reason he doesn't give advice, what works for us may not work for everybody else.
True.
You know what I mean?
True story.
What we do in our marriage may not work for
and
everybody
I always
else
tell
how
you
to
this.
do it.
Exactly. And I always tell you this, like everybody want coaching, everybody want advice until they don't. You know what I mean? Until they don't want to hear that no more. Like, I get it. Like that was great advice last week. That's why, like, honestly, I'm big on staying on my level because, like I said, people might want it this week. Next week they might be like, I don't want to hear it no more. Like that was stale information, right? So I just, again, with consistency, it rules all. But anyway, yeah. So
So, alrighty, we're wrapping up. Any
okay.
final thoughts about healthy relationships? I know you talked a little bit about the digital space. We didn't get into it a lot, but just any kind of final thoughts before you kind of give us your confession.
Uh, I think healthy relationships are necessary, right? Because I think,
Yeah.
especially the older you get, right, like you tend to appreciate relationships more as you get older. Like almost like I would say like, man, I'm just thankful for like friends that have been consistent. Like somebody that you meet as a friend and all they are is a friend and they just
Yeah.
continue. They just want to support you. You support them. Those people are like invaluable in life because that's your support system. Because every day is not going to be amazing. Every day is not going to be, bells and whistles. And I would say really you have far fewer days where it's like, man, I'm a success. Look at me. I'm succeeding, right? Even when you see the things around you that you're putting out are successful, like you still see that, like, you kind of got to get back to the drawing board. Most people, matter of fact, it's almost awkward to some people that are successful because it's like, all right, like let's not make a fuss about this. I'm gonna get back and do the next thing. But
They're like behind the scenes kind of thing. I
yeah,
don't
exactly.
don't
But
make
it's
it
like,
just yeah.
relationships are. I mean, it's like it's everything, right? Because it's like your network always determines your net worth, and like I'm real big on that, right? That's why I would say I look around at the people that I connect with on a consistent basis, and it's like, man, it's just amazing on amazing because like everybody got a story, and everybody just is
Yeah.
iron sharpening iron, right? So it always starts and stops with healthy relationships, but also, it's all right to like move past toxic relationships too. Everybody's not
Right.
gonna be able to go with you where you go, and well, say another way, everybody's gonna not be able to go with you as you grow. Like just period. It's
Yes.
hard, it sucks, it's painful, but it's necessary. It's a part of life.
Because I think sometimes people, they're comfortable where they are, and if you're not comfortable and you're ready to challenge yourself, I think that's something to really think about, that everybody can't go with you where you grow, because if you're constantly doing work and evolving, then they may be fine where they are.
Yep.
Sometimes that's how marriages end, that somebody grew and somebody did not. I
Stay
think me
right
and
where
you
they
were
was at. I
intentional
think that
about.
happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And me and you kind of wanted the same thing. I wanted somebody to grow with me. You wanted somebody to grow with you. So we're just fine with each of us growing to this space, which is how you stay. And if you're not comfortable growing, you need to marry somebody else that's not comfortable growing. Don't go see somebody that's a go getter,
Yeah.
knowing you don't want to go get nothing. And then you marry them, and 5 years down the line, they looking at you like, why are you comfortable? You knew that they were a go getter in the beginning. You know what I mean? When you
Yeah.
attached your comfortable self to them. So I think that's important to say, kind of know what your expectations are and your fit, right? That if and be okay if the people can't go. I think that's something that as we get older, it's funny because when in therapy and psychology, they talk about this stage of life where you're young and you have tons of friends, and you get to 30s and they're dwindling down. And by the time you're like 60s, you got like two friends you call all the time. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I can think about as my grandmother kind of got older, she had like one of her and Miss Peggy. That was it. You know what I mean? She had a couple other friends, but it was mainly her and this one friend, and they went everywhere together. They joined an organization called the Red Hatters together. You know what I mean? And they did life together. And I think that as you get older, it's quality over quantity, right? I don't have
Always.
time to deal with the toxic people because I want people who are genuinely there for me. I read a meme that talked about sometimes people can't root for you because of the silent jealousy or the things that they're thinking about you, so they can't root for you because they're secretly jealous of you. And I think that sometimes we don't know that because people come in our lives, they say all these kinds of things, and then the little, like you said, some of these red flags in relationships, some of them are in our friendships too. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it may just be time. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
People, we talk about reasons, seasons, and lifetime, but we really don't apply it to all phases of life, because a season could literally be years, months, weeks, you know what I mean? A decade or two. And so we just think, well, if you're there for an extended period of time, then you probably won't expire. But that doesn't mean that. You know what I mean? At certain stages of life, people kind of you ebb and flow with what you have going and what you're next. I remember one of my friends used to say, when I'm single, I had single friends. When I'm dating, I got dating friends. Married, I got married friends. Married with kids now. Married with kids now. And in a minute, I think about our kids' friends at school. We put them in sports. Those are going to be people we see. Denzel Washington talked about that. Like, the people you end up being friends with are the people your kids end up hanging with. And that's kind of where you begin to, really see how your relationships ebb and flow. So I think that you gave us some really, really good nuggets about healthy relationships, really taking care of your mental health. Like, because I feel like for men, one thing I have consistently heard echoed is people aren't being aware of how we're struggling with our mental health. And even if we're fine, they're not giving us an opportunity to say when we're not, right? I'm fine today, but what if in 2 weeks I'm not?
I mean, that's true.
You,
That's true. That's true. That's true. And I'll let you say that for another episode because you're supposed to be going to the confessions because
we're here.
this late show, you know what I'm
Hey, bro.
saying, and bed,
So you
because
you tell your kid to
regiment.
sleep.
No, no,
You,
no, no. Like, see, look,
you
see, we're
talking
going off
your
the rails
baby.
again. See what I'm saying? Like, you waited 39 minutes into this interview to go out to the. It's all good. Anyway, like I said, I told you this was gonna
I
go
went to the
good
real. What?
or bad. Anyway,
This
whatever.
is marriage, I guess. You know
Whatever.
what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. This is whatever. All right. So I get to talk, right? Confessions, right?
You get to talk.
Nah, honestly,
Posh Allen, let's go.
man, whatever. See what I'm saying? Like, you just why you got to do all that? You ain't got to do all that. Anyway, so I think for me, man, my confession is, you know, this year I think was probably one of the worst years, like the beginning of it, like beginning of the year, from a planning standpoint. I think in my life, like me, I'm very goal oriented,
Yeah.
very goal driven, very like, okay, beginning of the year, what do I want to accomplish? Almost to the point where, I get bored sometimes because I'm like, all right, knock it out, knock it out, knock it out, right? For the things that I want to do. But this was one of the first years where I looked at all of my goals and none of them were really, I really couldn't really find any for myself, like, for the family, all this stuff, everything we do. And it was like, it was kind of depressing. But I would say I started this year much lower than people might have realized. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I probably broke down more. Just like, it's weird for me to even talk about this kind of stuff, but I would say I probably broke down more because I realized that, like, I'm utilizing my potential, but I knew that there was more, and I knew that there was something else I needed to put my mind, and I couldn't figure out exactly what it was. But I think through a series of events, I'm probably more clear now than I've ever been on what my next steps are, how to get there, what we need to do, the vision, the team, the everything that we need to do with a lot of the things that we need to do, or in general. And it's free and it's probably empowering. I would say, I'm probably the most free I've probably ever been in my life, with probably the most amount of responsibility that I've ever had in my life. But it's all good. Yin and the yang, peace and the balance, all about harmony.
But I
So
think that telling people that is a really real confession that he's very strategic. He's very accountable. He's very, very much so planning his next steps. In January, the bottom fell out. I mean, for a number of reasons that we had to kind of be like, well, those goals can't, we can't. I don't even feel like I had time to set goals. I feel like I'm just now kind of merging over some things that I need
anyway,
to do. Yeah.
that's another podcast in itself. You and how much time you got to set your goals, and I need to wait.
Look at you.
Anyway,
that podcast. Well, I appreciate that confession because I feel like that can help some people that sometimes I think I like what you said about right now you feel free. You're the closest that you've ever been after a series of events. And I think those series of events, it's almost like you get broken to be made, right? That things start to fall out of place, but really they're falling in step with where you need to be, not necessarily where you thought you were going.
Right. I would agree.
Well, Michael Windom, we have enjoyed having you today. As you guys have seen, y'all wanted to know what he thought. I love my husband's train of thought because I think a lot of ways it challenges what we feel like we have to give into. I think sometimes we feel like we have to give into some of these norms, and he basically said, you don't. Sometimes, you know what I mean? There's a difference in being professional, but there's also a difference in you just needing to own the space and being yourself. And that confidence really is key to being able to maneuver in any space you're in.
Right.
So we appreciate him coming on, closing out our month for Black men and mental health, talking about dating, relationships, marriage, and a little bit of parenting in there as well. So next month, we're having an adult career day. I got some people coming on talking about mindset, nutrition, wellness. I got some people talking about making money out the box. Our biz boss mom, Teresa will be on. I got Tina coming on next week. And for the summer, I'm planning a whole bunch of things for the summer. So we're doing March, we're doing April, then I'll take May off. And then the summer, we're kicking off with some chefs, some fun, and some really exciting things you could do with your family and friends in the summer. All righty, guys. Talk to you later.